Welcome to Diverse Orange, our conversations about diversity here in Central Florida. My guest today is Cam. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And Cam, how do you pronounce your last name?
Shenai. That's the
Shenai.
way it is spelled. Shenai.
Okay, great. Well, Cam, you were born in India, is that right?
That's correct, in Mumbai.
So, growing up in a very large city, different than our country here, what were some of your thoughts about the United States as a kid?
Oh, great. First of all, Mumbai today has about 22 million people. So it wasn't as large as it is now. However, growing up, my impression of United States was around the movies I saw about Elvis Presley and Clint Eastwood. It was all Hollywood and singing and dancing and young people having a good time. So that was the image I had. Anne Margaret and Elvis Presley having a good time in Vegas.
What brought you to the United States then as a young man?
As a young man, I was 27 when I came here. I was married actually with a little child, 2-month-old baby. I call ourselves economic immigrants. What does that mean? So my older brother, and my older sister, both of them were in the United States. And my father visited the United States. He came back and he said, Cam, why don't you too go there? They are settled there. It's a beautiful country. And I said, sure, why not? So we decided myself first, and then my wife and my child followed later, 19 months later. We came here on March 18th, 1976. I came here in 1976. And I went to Berkeley, UC Berkeley, to get my master's in engineering. So from Bombay to Berkeley was my first landing spot in the United States.
And what was that like? Was that a culture shock? Was it what was different or what was similar?
Okay, there was very little similarity, but I landed in New York, and it was March, so it was cold. So I land there and I see all these colorful cars and colorful buses and hustle bustle. And my cousin came to pick me up. He takes me to his apartment, and I go inside, and he said, let's get your bags. So I said, let's go out and pick up my bags. And I'm without my coat. And it was freezing cold. It was March. Um, on the other hand, in the house, it was pretty warm. So he says, everything is centrally heated here. I did not have that concept until I came here. So that was my first shock. I said, wow, everything seemed quiet. Everything looked organized. And people seemed friendly. I still have that feeling sometimes.
Quiet, organized, and friendly. And you're talking about New York City?
I'm talking about now New Jersey, because he was in New Jersey.
All right.
So that was my introduction to the United States.
All right. And then California is a little different than New York as well.
Yeah. So my brother those days was in Portland, Oregon. So from Buffalo, New York, finally to my sister was in Buffalo. So from Buffalo, I went to Portland, and he showed me around for a couple of days, and he took me for a car ride from Portland, Oregon to Berkeley, California. One of the most beautiful car rides ever. I still remember it. And California was totally different than New York. And that's where I started my life, in the International House in Berkeley, California.
Well, what brought you eventually to Central Florida?
So it was 1977, 78. There was a recession going on, and I needed a roof over my head. My sister was in Buffalo. So she said, why don't you come over and look for a job here? So imagine going from Berkeley to Buffalo, New York. And that's
a lot of B's there. Mumbai, Berkeley, Buffalo.
Other than the opening letter, everything is different. So I was in Buffalo, and I found my first job in Buffalo.
And eventually you got here. You're here now. So
Yeah,
well,
yeah. So from Buffalo, I joined Xerox in Buffalo. I'm sure you heard about Xerox, one of the best corporations ever. So I started there as a bag carrying sales rep, and eventually then I went to Rochester, New York. And when I left Xerox, I was the head of marketing for North America. And after 30 years there, I ventured out and got another job in Rochester as a chief client officer for Sutherland Global Services, an international company, a smaller company. And I did that for about a couple of years, 2.5 years. And in 2011, remember, 46 years have passed now. That time it was about 36 years. And my family convinced me that it was time to retire. So we loved upstate New York, but then we said, let's go to a warmer place. So we looked at Arizona, we looked at California, but we said Florida. Why? Something about the ocean, something about the palm trees, something about a vacation like thing brought us to Orlando. Orlando because it is Central Florida. And one of my friends said, hey, Disney has done all the research they have to do to see about this storm hitting Orlando. They wouldn't have built such a huge park if they didn't feel safe. So I thought, that made sense. So we picked Orlando. Then the question, Terry, was where in Orlando? So Lake Nona was just being built. This is in 2014. It had 5,000 people. But something about the town, Lake Nona, which is southeast of Orlando, it had the vibe, it had the buzz, it had the youth, it had energy. So my wife and I said, hey, why don't we just settle here? And we ended up buying a house in Lake Nona, Florida. So that's where we are.
it sounds like you think that was a good decision.
It was one of my best top 5 decisions in my life.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, what about Central Florida as a whole do you really like?
What I like about Central Florida, a bunch of things. One is it's like a vacation every day. The sunshine, right? The waterways, and where we are, the diversity. I think diversity brings culture. Culture brings community, and it has lots of advantage. And Lake Nona particularly is a very diverse town, and so is Orlando for that matter. And I feel at home here. When I go to Publix, I feel at home. I go anywhere, I feel at home. So that was one of the most wonderful things that happened to us.
Wonderful. What do you, so it's been a long time that you've been in the United States, longer than you were living in India, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I'm sure there's some Indian traditions, culture that you keep carrying on.
Yes, we do. Terry, it is interesting you asked me because a lot of people, my kids had asked me this when they were babies. I have two children. Well, now one is 46, the other one is 37. But they used to ask, they're red-blooded Americans. So they used to ask, so what do we celebrate, Dad and Mom? And we said, we're going to celebrate everything. So we celebrated Easter. We brought a Christmas tree. So we enjoyed those things. At the same time, we celebrated Diwali, which, if you know, it is the festival of lights. We celebrated Holi, Holi, which is a festival of color. All Indian traditions, and we said, let's be not one heritage family, but Indo-American heritage family. So we kind of did all of it. We do follow certain religious holidays and so on and so forth. But over time, 46 years in America, 27 years in India, my heart is full-blooded American, but there is one chamber, Terry, that beats India, and I think that feeling is never going to go away. So we have decided to embrace both cultures and live happily and uh, transmit that culture to our families. And another thing, Terry, what has happened is that I think this happens to all immigrants. My daughter has married a Greek American. My son has married a Canadian. Just imagine their children now. They're half this, they're half that. And we just embrace everything. And just even Greek has tremendous traditions, tremendous culture. I mean, their history goes back longer than many. So we are kind of a world heritage kind of guys.
Fabulous. Well, Cam, we appreciate your coming to help spice up our community with that little part of your heart that's still Indian, and the passion I can see that you have for the American part of your heart as well, and your family. So thank you for being here, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Yes,
Take
and
care.
thank you all for watching Diverse Orange every Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And also I do a Playfully Orange on Thursdays at 1 o'clock about arts and culture in Central Florida. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.